Welcome to video 2 of Unhinged Spanish course for complete beginners. In this video, we're going to go over some simplistic explanations of what nouns are and learning by using them. If you want to jump straight to the practice, the video has been time-stamped where it begins. Now, before you start saying things in Spanish that you probably shouldn't, you really need to get a couple foundational tools under your belt. I know, just like all the other videos about Spanish online, but hear me out. Sure, it's still funny if you say something weird to a native speaker, but the real magic happens when you decided to say that genuinely, and not just because you didn't know how to speak the language. So, it's my solemn vow to you that when you say something cringe, it's because you chose to, not because you're incapable. And that, my friend, is a power that nobody can take away from you. As a quick note, I want to give you a heads up. I might use grammatical terms through these lessons, but I won't be giving you a detailed textbook explanation about them like in school. I'm not saying that grammar isn't important, but it's just not going to happen here. I've learned way more grammar from learning another language than I ever did in my native tongue, so I get it. If some of the terms may have escaped you over time, it's okay. With that said, anytime I use any grammatical term, whether simple or complex, fear not if you don't 100% recall what it is. I will say enough to make it make sense for the lesson. So, first things, we're going to start with a couple of nouns. Just as a reminder, a noun is something more or less like a person, place, thing, or idea. There is a lot of nuance here, but in general, if you could put the word like my in front of it, such as my cat, the word after it is the noun. So, my cat, his dog, her parrot, your water bottle, their house, our family. In all those examples, the cat, the dog, the bottle, the parrot, house, family, they're all nouns. A noun is not just a physical thing that you can touch, but they also include abstract things like an idea, like a job, an argument. Sometimes it can be really abstract, and we're not going to get into that right now. We're going to stick to the physical things for simplicity, but just so you have an idea, it would be words like hope, honor, space, concern, ability. All of those are also nouns, but they're not as easy as like, oh, my dinner plate or table or something like that. Like I said before, this isn't going to be Nouns 101, so I'm not going to fixate on it. Just try to remember for now that if you can touch it, it's a noun. If you can travel to it, it's a noun. And just know that there's a couple extra nuances beyond that we'll get to. So, this is the practice portion of the video. Here, you're going to have a variety of words that you can have the opportunity to use. Remember, if you want the course to work for you, you need to work for the course. What does that mean? Well, for the best results, you're going to want to say the words as they've been introduced to you. So, there'll be a brief pause after each new word so you have the opportunity to say it out loud, which you should do. And then it'll repeat one more time for clarity. You will be asked to recall words and assemble sentences as we get further along, but if you don't remember a word or a phrase, it's okay. It's perfectly all right because the words are going to be reintroduced in meaningful ways to help you lock them in. If you're ready, let's begin. One of my favorite Spanish words is the word for squirrel, and that word is ardilla. Ardilla. That simply means squirrel and nothing else. If you want to say a squirrel, you can do it just like you would in English. Just use the Spanish equivalent of the word for a. In this case, you would use the sound una. Una. So, a squirrel would be una ardilla. Una ardilla. The word for bread in Spanish is pan. Pan. Now, if I wanted to connect the squirrel with the bread, I could do that in a similar way, just like I would in English using the equivalent for and. The word in Spanish for and is y. Y. So it's pronounced very similar to the letter E in the English alphabet, and it's just one letter. So, how would you say squirrel again? Ardilla. And what about a squirrel? Una ardilla. Now, if a squirrel is una ardilla and bread is pan, how would you say a squirrel and bread? Una ardilla y pan. Una ardilla y pan. Perfect. Sounds like a title to a poem or something. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to drop a knowledge bomb on you super early. Actually, two of them at once. You might think, what? We just started. And yes, this is the perfect time to introduce them to you. Two very important rules. One, which is beginner level, and the other one, maybe not so much, but it'll still be helpful. So, first rule. Nouns in Spanish, like the two we've encountered so far, ardilla and pan, both have genders. So, what does that mean? Well, from the English perspective, that sounds like nonsense, or better yet, noun sense. But seriously, every noun in Spanish is either masculine or feminine. What this means is when you say squirrel, a squirrel, una ardilla, you are using the feminine version of a, which is una, because the word ardilla is feminine. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the actual gender of the squirrel, by the way. That's just for the word ardilla, which is feminine in its own. So we won't go down that rabbit hole quite yet. Now, the gender of a noun affects a couple things. One, in this sense, the word for a that you would use. So in this case, a is una. And it affects how you would say the. So the squirrel would be different than a squirrel, right? Una ardilla, a squirrel. And the word for the is la. L-A. La. So, if the feminine the is la, how would you say the squirrel? La ardilla. La ardilla. Unlike ardilla, the word pan is masculine. So, we don't say stuff like la pan. That's absolutely nonsense and inappropriate. Instead, we have to use the masculine form of the. The masculine Spanish word for the sounds like el. El. And in case you're watching this video in your car, that's spelled E-L. And just sounds almost like you were saying the letter L almost. So it's not la pan, it's el pan. El pan. So tell me, what was the squirrel again? La ardilla. La ardilla. And what about a squirrel? Una ardilla. Una ardilla. So I told you the feminine word for the, which is la, and the feminine version of a, which is una. I told you the masculine form of the word the, which is el, but what's the masculine form of a? Un. Un. Now, I told you a moment ago that I was going to drop two different knowledge bombs on you. One of them was introducing that nouns have gender. Now, for the more advanced knowledge bomb that you don't typically find in beginner courses. See, when you add a word like un in front of a word like pan, it would probably be understood as something different than what you thought. Well, what do you mean? It would just be a bread, right? Well, sure, but who says that? Even in English, you shouldn't say a bread. That's not exactly concise. Most likely, if you said un pan, it would be understood as being something more like a bread roll rather than just bread. You, in a way, kind of change what it is. I mean, it's still bread, but where did the roll come from? Well, let me explain. Bread is, well, bread.
What the hell is even that?
There isn't a definitive amount of it. It's kind of like asking how long a piece of string is. The simple answer is as long as it needs to be. See, if I was going to a fiesta and I promised to bring the bread, and I were being a real payaso, I would bring a single slice of half-eaten toast and still sleep at night knowing that I did my assigned task. Do you see where I'm getting with this? Sure, I'd be happy, but all the haters at the party would probably be feeling a little bit differently. Whether you have a factory full of bread or a crumb, you can't put a number on it to make it mean what you want it to be. You know what? To demonstrate this, let's do an experiment. For this experiment, we're going to count water, and I've got my assistant Jace. All right, I'm going to pour this into this cup, and you're going to count them as they go into there. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, ready?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3,
Come on, Bones, you're failing me.
4, 5, 6. You count ahead. You know what? 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15.
So as you can see, it doesn't really matter because you can't count water. I need you to count the water for me. You can count apples, but things like water are more whimsical. Having more or less of them still give you the same thing. Welcome to the wonderful world of countability. No, not accountability or your account's ability, countability, as in whether or not something is countable or not. In case you're lost, don't worry, it'll make sense soon. The easiest way to explain this is think about if Jimmy had 3 squirrels, tres ardillas, and Susie took 2 of them. Jimmy would only have una ardilla remaining. So squirrels are countable because you can put a number of them in a location and easily keep track of how many there are numerically, unless they scamper away really fast. On the other hand, imagine if Jimmy has water and Susie gives him more water. He has, water. It might be more water than he started with, but nonetheless, still just water. So a countable item is something that you can put a number in front of it and it still makes sense. As in 3 apples, 3 manzanas, 15 fire hydrants, 15 hidrantes, or 145 pink elephants, 145 elefantes rosas. Non-countable items need units of measurement. That's the only way to really make them make sense. So this means something like 3 glasses of water, a milliliter of orange juice, a bowl of rice, or like in this case, a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread is way more concise than simply a bread. So in real life, you might want to say, I want 2 breads if you're in a bakery, and the context is really straightforward. But it's not typically a bread, 2 breads, 3 breads. Remember, like I mentioned before, something magical happens when you put the word un or una in front of something. It essentially is treating it like one instance of bread, and since bread doesn't mean much, it would be understood to be something that would make sense, like a bread roll, depending on what region you're in. Another clear giveaway would be if you try to make it plural without a unit of measurement. It sounds wrong, like waters. It doesn't sound right, right? And neither does breads. 1 loaf of bread plus another isn't 2 breads. It's 2 loaves of bread. So, let's get back to the practice. How do you say a squirrel again? Una ardilla. And what about the bread? El pan. And if you did want a bread roll, what's one way you could say that? A bread roll. Un pan. Un pan. If you wanted to say the word for cheese, you would say queso. Queso. Queso is a masculine word, by the way, so it'll use the sound L for the, like it was for the bread. So, go ahead and now tell me, how would you say the cheese and the bread? El queso y el pan. El queso y el pan. Well, keeping in mind what you were just taught a moment ago, would it make sense if I were to say the phrase un queso? If you're hesitant to answer, then just ask yourself, how much sense would it be if you were to say, I have 5 cheeses, if you aren't referring to some form of collection or type of cheeses? Well, if you said no, congratulations, you're a real cheese whiz.
Hooray!
Queso is not countable. It would need to have something like a piece of cheese. A piece of cheese would be un pedazo de queso. Un pedazo de queso. Pedazo is the word for piece. So, un pedazo is a piece. Of course, we would never say a piece cheese because that's nonsense, and not the good kind of nonsense. To make it make sense, we have to add the word of to connect the piece to the cheese. Of, in Spanish, is pronounced as de. De. Putting it all together, a piece of cheese would be un pedazo de queso. Un pedazo de queso. So, suppose you were to say a piece of bread. Un pedazo de pan. Un pedazo de pan. Holy macaroni, what is that? Oh, it looks like one of my favorite future books, but it's in English. I swear I ordered it in Spanish edition. Oh well. I'm hoping you can help me out with this one. I need you to tell me what this would be in Spanish. The bread, a squirrel, and a piece of cheese. Think it out for a second. The bread, a squirrel, and a piece of cheese. El pan, una ardilla y un pedazo de queso. Fantastic. I think we learned a lot of new concepts in this video, so I'll end it there so it's manageable. So far, we covered an overview about what nouns are, masculine and feminine forms of the words the and a concept of countability, some simple words like squirrel, bread, cheese, piece, and an onslaught of random ones you may have seen along the way. Don't worry if you don't remember the random words along the way. The future videos will assume that you've only learned the intended words that you were asked to repeat. If you feel comfortable with everything, click here to go to the next video, or it'll automatically go to the next one on the playlist. See you soon.